When does your trauma stop being an explanation? And maybe this fits what we're talking about with the women. When does your trauma stop being an explanation and becomes an excuse? At what point are we leaning more into this trauma um, being an excuse than just something that's an explanation of what you're going through, DK?
I
Mm.
think you got to put the trauma behind you. Like
But
when you
but but
go,
you just who was that? Jay?
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
go ahead,
Jay.
Jay. All right.
I just feel like the trauma, if you can hold on to trauma forever, but that's something that you can easily let go, give it to God, you can pray on, and you can leave that situation alone. But if
I don't
you
think it's easy to just let
continuously,
go trauma. You have to work through that.
yeah, you got to put spread you. I know all trauma might not be easy, but you still got to put in work behind that. And I feel like people they get lazy throughout the whole process. Not lazy, but some people's trauma might take longer than others. But you need to be working to do something to move past that and not stay in that same position.
I feel you on that. I feel like sometimes trauma, and then that's when bitterness seeks in, and bitterness is an affection of the spirit. So when they let that bitterness infect their spirit, it clouds their judgment and their thoughts on trying to have a heal and a nurturing relationship. Because again, they let that affection get into their spirit, and that's something that God has to deliver from them for them to have that nurturing spirit within that household, and the man has to realize that too. But he also has to help nurture that with her.
I feel both of y'all on that, and something just kind of dropped in my spirit when y'all were saying that, and maybe trauma becomes an excuse when we start to destroy God's image inside of a man, or we destroy God's image inside of a woman. When a man has the audacity to say that, a woman can't teach me anything, you know, nothing that a woman can do can truly mold who I am as a person, or vice versa. When a woman says that we need to decenter men, in some cases, women have even had entire movements talking about where we need to delete all men, and all I think when it starts to paint everybody in this picture, and we start to make trends based around this, when we start to build culture around this. I don't need a man to be in the house. I don't need a woman to tell me what to do. I can just do what I want. We straight Fred Flintstone up in here. So it's like I think that's when it starts to become a problem um, with regard to that. Another
Yeah,
comment from Jolene. Let's pull that up. That's why mental health is so important to women and men, so the healing process can begin. Um,
Hmm.
I get what she's saying with that. I get what she's saying with that. Anybody
yeah.
else with that? When does it start becoming an excuse, guys, and not just trauma? How long do we expect, the people that we love in our families to keep using this as an excuse when it goes beyond the an explanation? How long do we listen to that coworker's story for the 15th time, and it's just trauma dumping? How long are we going to be pushing people away in our lives that are potential partners because of this long going explanation and narrative that never seems to stop? When do we pull the plug on it?
You know, how can you deal with that? And I think a lot of men don't deal with their trauma. They don't deal with things in their past or mistakes they make. They just try to muscle through it. You know what I mean? A lot of times we just try to muscle through whatever we got going on. That's how we feel like we can get through it. But to be honest, we need each other. And a lot of times we don't either we don't trust each other. You know what I mean? We're scared that if we say something, they're gonna hold that against me. You know what I mean? But sometimes we just got to be honest with each other and be like, hey, I'm hurt right now. I don't know what to do, because a lot of times, we talking about being, protectors, sorry, providers, protectors, prophet and priest and problem solvers. But what about when you can't when you can't solve your own problems? What about when you can't um protect? You know what I mean? Like sometimes we go through those seasons where something happens and you can't do that and you don't want to share it, but and if you don't share it, you feel like there's no way out, and you turn to alternatives. That's just not the right thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
So good.
uh, nowadays men are more isolated and less engaged probably than any generation that we've ever been able to measure and study. What we're finding is most men don't even have a close friend to talk to, let alone, divide their time with. So you're absolutely right. Men have retreated inwards. They feel that the world is too difficult for them, or they're not appreciated, and that they are less than, that men are the problem in the world, and that we need to just sit back and let other diverse communities take over and run this thing for a while. So men are very disenfranchised. Um, but that's where the power of the cross comes into play. And that's why forums like this are so important, right? We always talk about the cross. As a man, you should be actively trying to find someone who's above you. This is someone who's mentoring you in something, especially spiritual. Then you should have someone below you. If you're doing good as a man and you're firing on all cylinders, who are you mentoring? Who's seeing you as an example, right? And remember, a mentor isn't like a supervisor or coach. A mentor is chosen by somebody. And then finally, you have those two people on the side of you. You have your peers that are holding you accountable and are living life with you. Most men don't have that. And we really have to do what we need to do as men to get rid of these dividing walls, to have at least I don't, therapy is a very controversial thing when it comes to men. I sometimes, therapy has a very valid place, but in my experience, it hasn't been a very good experience as a war veteran and things of that nature. I haven't had good experiences with therapy, and a lot of negligence. But at a minimum, if you as a man are going through life and walking through life, you need to have that cross. You need to have those outlets where you can talk to someone. I had a friend the other day that was going through his living will situation, and he contacts me and he say, "Hey, I need you to handle these things if I die." That's the guys on both sides of me. He's talking to somebody else about actually getting therapy for another brother. He's a mentor of mine to an extent, and asking him advice on what we can do to get this brother taken care of. Somebody above me, and then somebody below me. Just talking to one of my other mentees today about his father passing away. So we can't just walk this thing and not. We can't just talk this thing and not walk it. Every man on this panel, every man that can hear this, and those who can't, you need to have these elements of your life, and we need to be more social to get to that point. And if not, we're going to find ourselves in a very dark place as men.
Now give me two claps and a Rick. But you know what holds us? Pride and ego. It holds us up from taking that step. But
Yeah.
it's okay to take that step to seek out a brother for help.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the step has to be organic. Jesus says that
Yeah.
you know a tree by its fruit, right? You don't just walk in the bar and look for mentors and mentees.
Nope.
You might find some drinking peers, but you go to a place where you expect to find that. Maybe you're into coaching. I guarantee you, if you get into coaching, you're going to find some men at a minimum that can be some peers, and at a minimum, find some people that need a mentor, right? If you're engaged in your church community, right, you're going to find opportunities for yourself, for you to lead and things like this. All I'm saying is there's a social component, and taking these interests that we may have on the inside and externalizing them and finding our tribe, especially our tribe within the body of Christ.
I agree with you 100% on that. And it's for men who are leaders to reach out to brothers who do need that help and say, "Yo, I'm here for you," and let them know, like we said, men need a safe place too. And that's not
Yeah.
just at home. That's more than at home and with their spouse, but a safe place where they could go and confide in their brothers and they don't feel judged. Like they need that safe haven where it's like, yo, the I think and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. God had three people. He had 12, but he had three that he could share certain things with.
Hmm.
And those
James,
three,
Peter, and
Right.
John.
James,
right?
John, and
So
Peter.
right, so he could share those intimate things with them, and that's what us brothers needs. Those three or one who I can share. Look, I can say this to you and feel totally safe. But
Hmm.
also for the ladies who listen, he needs you to be one of those people too. He can share that and don't
Right.
get it thrown back in his face. And that's what a lot of men hate. And you wonder why men shut down and don't talk too much at home. because it's going to be brought up back up, or remember this, remember that. Nah, we don't want that. I want to be the same way that y'all want to come to us and confide. We want to do the same thing at home, but we also be able to do that at times with me with our homies, because I can't share certain things with you because I got to get it off my chest, and I might not get it off my chest the way I want to, as I might get it off with DK and Punch.
Mm, yeah. Where's my grown man bars at, DK?
I was ready for it.
Grown man boss. Something you got to deal with.
I agree 100. I agree 99% with all that. But I will say this to men, especially for the young men: if you go and you're dealing with men, you're going to get judged. You're going to
Yeah.
get you may get prodded, you may get clowned on a little bit, but it's a brotherly jostle, right? You have to have thick skin. Nothing's because I think I'm funny and I'm not, and I can be offensive. DK, you don't have to.
Not the cap.
Yeah, it's true. But the thing is, if you're bringing issues to your guy friends, you're gonna go through a gauntlet. You're gonna go through a little bit of a razzing, right? But you have to keep a positive idea about that. I don't think they're doing it to make you feel bad, but they're sometimes taking the awkwardness out of the conversation. So yeah, you need to be judged sometimes. We need more judgment, right? We want to be in this judge-free zone, but men don't go to other men for advice and shouldn't have the expectation of not being judged, right? I want to be held accountable. I'm having a hard time dealing with pornography. I'm having a hard time loving my neighbor. I'm having a hard time keeping my mindset together when I get frustrated with somebody in traffic. I don't need you to pat me on the back and tell me, sweet nothings in my ear. I need you to be a little bit tough with me and say, hey, man, this is the sixth time you brought this up. When are you going to get this figured out? You've been talking about going and getting that certification. You haven't done it yet. You've been putting on weight, but when was the last time you've been to the gym? What happened to that personal trainer you were talking about? We need tough love. Can we have those same conversations with women? No, but that's the benefit of us having brothers, because a brother can say that he should be able to say that without hurting another man's feeling. And that's why we're tougher as men, because we can take a punch on the chin and do these things. We have these, ladies, close your ears for a second. We have these same conversations with women, and there's a lot of offense that comes out of it. What you mean I got to lose weight? What you mean I got to make more money? I mean, for guys, though, it should be okay for me to say that to you and get straight to the point without having to put, a few layers of icing on it. You tracking what I'm saying?
But you gotta think some men, like you said, can handle that tough love. But you gotta think you need that tough love. What they say, iron sharpens iron.
Mm.
I need you to be truthful to me, because I don't need you to sugarcoat it. I need you to be truthful.
So I think a good question is, and I really want us to kind of listen to the Holy Spirit here, guys. What is something that you've all been hearing where God is saying that you need to improve in your character, improve in your spiritual walk, improve in your professional life, that you've just been kind of ignoring? Everybody has something that they need to improve upon. And of course, we as men are no exception to that. That being the case, what is something that your brothers have been telling you to do? What is something that you were offended by an enemy saying, but if someone who loved you said it, it would still be true?
I got something small. This ain't nothing big.
Now you don't have to share it, but I just wanted us to think about it. But since you're in a sharing mood, let's go ahead and go with it.
All right, that's good. But I had talked to Don about it the other day. I've been going to my men's study at my church. Everything's been going good and stuff. And I know the last time I was there, we did a group prayer. And everybody went through and they were saying their prayer, but I didn't know that they wanted every single person to go through. So when they had it was down like to the last 2-3 people, like down to like the last 3 people. And he was just like, did you want to pray? Well, he didn't ask me, he was just like, you gotta pray. I'm just like, when he had said that, for some reason it felt like the pressure was on me, and I never really had a problem with praying or anything like that, but I felt that after I heard a couple of the prayers that the men were speaking, I don't know, it was just something in my spirit that felt that my prayer wasn't going to be as powerful as the prayers I just heard. But that was just something that had just hit me at the moment. when I was thinking, but I did, you know, it was. I think that was just the devil in my ear, you know, just sneaking around in my head.
You know, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm, yeah, yeah. For me, since we sharing, I've been talking all day about that men. This is will overcome. You know what I mean? By our testimony sometimes, right? And I think sometimes I'm paraphrasing, but sometimes that as men that we get afraid to share our testimony, right? We only share the good things, our good testimonies, like what I mean. Hey, I made it, I graduated, I'm here, I'm there, but we forget to share. I was a crackhead, I was a drunk, I was a gambler, I was this, I was that. We don't share those things, right? So when we don't share those things, then someone else who's going through it can't get help. You know what I mean? And it's so sad. Like I see people, I'm like, man, you made it, right? But I know their story and I never hear their story. And I said to myself, I said, I don't never want to be like that. You know what I mean? And to your question, Punch, I was just saying that the preface is that, what I'm not saying that the enemy hasn't been saying this to me, but my peers have been talking about me just being more consistent in the things that I do, whether it's the podcast, whether it's my finances, whether me working out, it's just being more consistent when I do, because when I'm consistent, um, I'm powerful. You know what I mean? When I'm consistent, I'm making changes. But when I'm inconsistent, you know what I mean, that people are looking at me like, oh, if he can be inconsistent, I can. And like, what? Why put that on me? But the thing is, guess what? If I'm a representation of God, then when they're looking at me, I'm accountable to be in that light. You know what I mean? I'm accountable to being. They see me, they're like, wait a second, okay, DK, if you're doing when I'm doing right, they want to do right. When I'm doing wrong, they like it's okay to do wrong. You know what I mean? And yeah, you shouldn't put your expectations in man, but sometimes people do have that. So if we're the example, we got to do better, and not we. I got to do better. You know what I mean? Y'all got to figure out what y'all got to do, but I know I got to do better in different aspects of my life. So that's where I'm at with that now. My man, we're supposed to have this.
Grown man boss. Something you got to deal with.
It's all good though.
I keep falling into. I keep hearing that parable of the talents from Jesus. I know God has given me a couple of gifts, and I'm like, I'm just sitting here wasting it. How can I best serve my community? How can I best serve you guys? But I do know doing nothing is not beneficial. You know, DK, somebody that's always reminding me, hey man, you got to reinvest these talents back into people. You got to continue to do that. And if it weren't for like one or two people, I would never hear this. Right. And that goes back to what DK was saying and what the other brother was saying. We are so removed from Christian culture and the Holy Spirit, us as a people in general, in our country, in our world. You may be the only person praying for somebody right now. Think about that.
Grown man boss. Something you got to deal with.
There are literally people out there that have nobody praying for them, and you may be the only one. There's a guy that I know that I met. I was traveling overseas. He's a Jewish guy actually, and he's just wilding out over here, And I'm like, he's done a good job of removing people from his life. And I'm praying for this guy, and I know I'm probably the only person standing in the gap between him and hell. And that's why we have to put on our armor. That's why we have to be soldiers for Christ. That's why we have to get our marching orders every single day. That's why we got to be in the Bible and fight against all this temptation to sit and watch social media 23 hours a day and waste time. God wants us out there and fighting, and that's something we got to really focus on.